this process of meditation, when we're using the word vichara or reflection, we're reflecting now on something that we've invoked and we can perceive. Those qualities of that divinity have been invoked at us through breath meditation coupled with the name of God. Now we're starting to have experience. And the reflection is we're observing that experience and trying to now love it. There's a big difference, even though it is helpful to say, to realize and kind of try to reflect on, I am a divine nature. But ultimately, those are words and thoughts. And so even though it's helpful to like keep us from falling into a negative rut, which is nature of the mind, think, God, you know, I'm miserable. No, I'm not. I'm really divine in a miserable state. Well, this is why meditation is what is being used throughout all religions to say, just the understanding that we're just kind of in a bad mood, and therefore we're really better than that. We're talking about, again, transformation. Changing it from the bottom to the top. So the Maharshi went on to say, release comes next. This release from the idea of like, okay, I am individual, I am a jiva, I am kind of separate from God. This is what the absorption gives. And finally, this unsurpassable state of unity with God. So then we do it by reflection. So the Maharshi spoke about that. Before we actually try to go into the practice of, let's say, asking the question, who am I, and doing this Atma Vichara, which is a very difficult practice. Difficult mostly because I'll do it in a different way than you'll do it. We'll come to the same goal if we're persistent, but depending on the propensity of the mind, you go about it different ways. One thing I can say is, there's not an answer to the question, who am I? Really, those who I've known who have lived in India will practice this Atma Vichara, or this inquiry or reflection to the nature of the self. And as the Maharshi and many others, and even Kaivalya Upanishad, on the major Upanishads, they say you ask the question, who am I? You don't hear in your ear, even your inner ear, you're not informed who you are. What happens is, it's the process which causes you to move toward transformation into who you are. It's a revelation. It also is a process of awakening. And now we can see the importance that even the Maharshi, Sri Ramana Maharshi, he employed these preliminary practices of watching the breath and mantra meditation to get the mind concentrated. Okay? Even Atma Vichara is based on concentration. But then, to read some of the things he said are helpful to get us an idea of how we're going to approach this. A devotee once said to the Sri Ramana Maharshi, the mind is not steady in meditation. He said, whenever it wanders, turn it inward again and again. You see, he's repeating what we did in an earlier session. You just keep pulling the mind back to one thought, whether it be the awareness and movement of the breath, or the sound of the mantra, or the combination and unison of the two. Even the great Advaita Vedanta is saying, you keep pulling it back. You don't say, this is an illusion, the mind doesn't exist. You just kind of zone out and just kind of just feel blissful. He's saying, turn it again and again inward. Then the disciple again further said, this misery, this dukkha, overpowers me because my mind is full of distraction, and I get bummed out at the state of my mind. So he says, because of this, this inquiry and reflection is impossible. The Maharshi said, it is because the mind is too weak. Make it strong. Here we're going to see, this is Sri Ramana Maharshi, with many people who follow him, or either others who use this Advaita Vedantic approach and say the mind is an illusion, all this is an illusion. He's saying, not only you disband it, you have to make it strong. So the devotee says, this is wonderful. We've asked these questions ourselves in our own mind and heart. The devotee says, okay, by what means do I make my mind strong for this reflection, this Atma Vichara, or any form of meditation? How do I make my mind strong? The Maharshi said, Satsanga, Ishwara Ardhana, or pranayama. Association with the wise, worship of God, and developing a devotional attitude, and also watching the breath. When he used the word pranayama, he didn't mean breath exercises. So here the Vedantas is saying, you make the mind strong by association with the wise, devotion and worship of God, and watching the breath. Then the devotee went on further to say, if a form is given, I can meditate on it, and other thoughts are eliminated. But the self is formless. So again, the Maharshi is saying his reflection on the nature of the self. This devotee like us is saying, well, you know, it's formless, it's so ethereal, how can you focus on it? I can focus on the breath, I can focus on the mantra, but this self is not. So the Maharshi gave the practice to many, not to all, but to many. Focus on the breath, get this mind strong, and develop concentration. When we become concentrated and deeply aware, then this self is not so ethereal and formless, because we can feel its manifestation of divinity, love, compassion, all the qualities of God, which you say the God and the self are one. When we get focused, we can feel it. This is why the saints even say, you can see God. If you need to, and you get concentrated enough and inward enough, it manifests. So he says, in response to this self is formless, I can't concentrate on it, I'm trying this Vichara method, the Bhagavan said, meditation on forms or concrete objects is said to be dhyan. Dhyan is what's called meditation. The Sanskrit word D-H-Y-A-N-A. Whereas the inquiry into the self is reflection. How is it to be practiced? The Maharshi said, meditation serves to concentrate the mind. The predominant idea keeps off all others. It varies according to the individual. It may be on an aspect of God or a mantra or on the self. This is talk number 54. So you see, this is what we're after. Even in the more Advaitic type of meditation of self-inquiry, we are trying to predominantly keep all the thoughts onto one thought. Okay? He says it can be done according to the individual, even in Atma Vichara, an aspect of God, a mantra, or the self. So, if we're watching the breath as the form, what does, again, Sri Ramana Maharshi say about it? In chapter 6 of Sri Ramana Gita, Sri Ramana Maharshi said this, one should control the fickle mind by controlling the breath, and then, like a tethered animal, it ceases to stray. He was saying we recognize the fact this aspect of our field of thoughts is very fickle. You can't control it. But like a tethered animal, if you confine it, it ceases to stray. It's by watching the breath. It goes on to say, with the control of breath, control of thoughts is also achieved. When thoughts are controlled, one stands established at their source. We're trying to get to the source of thoughts. As Ramana Maharshi said, the I thought is the first thought. From that, everything else manifests. By just controlling the thought process, everything dissolves down to that first thought. And that is also the self. This is the reflective side of the self. He finished by saying, control of breath merely means watching with the mind the flow of breath, the movement of breath. Through such constant watching, kumbhaka does come about. This word kumbhaka is very important. The Sanskrit word kumbhaka means it's cessation of breath. When it is achieved, you get a cessation of thoughts.